You're listening to Never Heard of It, a Night Shift Radio production. This podcast is not sponsored by Apple, but it does seem as though this entire podcast network does in fact run on Apple products. And I think the point that I'm trying to get at is that Apple should be giving us stuff for free. I think that's just
good luck
putting
with
it out
that.
there.
Yeah. Of all the companies whose products we use, they're probably the least likely to be like, yeah, here's things for free.
Here's things for free. I know.
I actually only recently switched to using Apple products for podcasting, though I have been a long time user as like an individual. But so far this experience is nice. So I got my new Mini that I record on, and I also got a new iPad for mostly just for fucking around. Just something fun to have. But I've been using the sidecar feature just to have Audacity offloaded onto a smaller screen so I can see it and know that it hasn't fucked up on me, that it is still in fact recording each session.
Right.
But I don't have to do anything with it, and I like that. It's just out of the way.
Yeah, I run two monitors, so I have our video chat on one on my left, to my left, and then I record into GarageBand and GarageBand over on the right.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to just be like, what? Is this still recording? How loud am I being? Is it good? All right. Did it pick up my sniffle? Yes, of course it did.
Of course it did.
Of course it did.
Yeah. I was using a 2-monitor setup with my old desktop, but they were 2 smaller monitors, and I actually am cheating now, and I'm using the big monitor that work gave me
nice.
for this setup, and using one of my smaller monitors for work. Because I all day long I'm unplugging and like walking over to the couch or like to the the kitchen table to take a meeting or whatever. I'm not at my desk for an entire work day ever, so there wasn't really a need to always have this big monitor. It was kind of underutilized.
Yeah. So it sounds like you put it to good use.
I have.
As all things should be. But this is not to talk about our office setups, although we do it almost every episode. We are here, in fact, to talk about movies. And more specifically, we are here to celebrate Kathryn Hahn, who just finished her run on WandaVision just a couple of days ago. From the time you were listening to this episode, it was just a couple of days ago. Unless you subscribe to our Patreon, then it was today. Today she finished her run on WandaVision. At least ended season 1 on WandaVision, because we're recording this before that episode, so we don't know. She could be dead. I don't know. I doubt it. But.
I mean, obviously, as of the recording of this episode, we can't spoil the last episode of WandaVision because we haven't seen it. But are we spoiling anything? Are we just not gonna touch that? Because Kathryn Hahn's character has become a lot more important to the show than it was originally implied.
Yeah, so we'll leave it at that. If for those of you that maybe have not seen WandaVision, but I don't know, it's probably going to come up a little bit throughout the episode, but maybe not too spoilery. But this month, actually, we're going all in, and we're starting the month off with a Kathryn Hahn episode to talk about her as an actress. She's fantastic. But then the rest of the month, we're actually going to talk about movies with Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie, because at the end of the month, we see Falcon and Winter Soldier kick off. So we're kind of celebrating them as actors.
Well, and you got to see in Slack the other day that I frequently fuck up and refer to him as Sebastian Shaw, but that's a different Marvel character.
Yep. Yeah, who is played by Kevin Bacon, if they carry that one over.
That's true. In the First Class reboot universe. But yeah, so the picks this month were really interesting. So you had selected this one that we're going to talk about today for Kathryn Hahn. The first of the movies featuring Sebastian and Anthony was one that I had actually watched last year, and I think you and I talked about, but I can't remember if we talked about on the podcast at all.
We might have.
I picked it specifically because if you like Sebastian Stan, you won't after watching this movie. Week 3 of this month was not so much a listener request, so we didn't include it in our month of listener requests that we just got finished doing. So if you're unfamiliar with that, go back and check out last month. We did a full month of requests from people who listen to the podcast. But this one was from someone who explicitly does not listen to the podcast, and that would be my wife Ellen. But she had asked us to do this movie. And it just happens to turn out that Sebastian Stan was in it, so very exciting. And then we're ending the month with an Anthony Mackie film that was fairly recently released on Netflix that I'm excited to check out. So back in that sci-fi adventure genre. So I think we've got a pretty good month ahead of us. I think we've given ourselves a little bit of a break from the bullshit.
Yeah, I'm actually excited. I'm excited to talk about this movie today. And I do want to preface for those, like, I guess we'll do content warning out of the way. So the name of this movie is called Afternoon Delight. It is available on Tubi, as well as you can get it on a few other sites via paid subscriptions or just renting or something. But this movie does in fact contain nudity. There is drug use, and of course there's some very frank sex talk and language. Other than that, well, I mean, let's dive right in. So Afternoon Delight starring Kathryn Hahn.
Well, hold up.
Yeah.
What show are we doing?
Oh. It's been, I don't know. It's
important to remember that because we have so many.
Hello and welcome to the Never Heard of It podcast. I'm your host, Michael Fight.
And I am Caleb. What the fuck is the cloud? Coy.
That entire rant is spectacular. What the fuck is the cloud?
Best.
Where is the cloud?
What the fuck is the cloud?
Oh, I'm so excited for this. So today we're talking about the movie Afternoon Delight. Now this isn't I'm gonna say an older movie, but this movie came out about 8 years ago now. And this was directed by Joey Soloway, but they're credited as Jill Soloway. At the time, they were Jill Soloway. Now they go by Joey Soloway. So they directed this movie, and they've done a few things outside of this. By the way, they wrote this movie as well. But they were a producer for United States of Terra, producer for 6 Feet Under, and a producer for Transparent. The TV series, so some pretty good stuff. Oh yeah, they also executive produce I Love Dick, which is supposed to be really, really fucked up. It's about this woman that they're like in an open relationship, and she ends up getting obsessed with this man named Dick, but like he doesn't know it, and like all she does is talk about it with her husband. And since they have an open relationship, it's kind of like he's like, okay, yeah, like, have you talked to him? And she's like, well, I can't do that. So it's supposed to be a really crazy show. But yeah, so she was also a consulting producer on Grey's Anatomy. That's cool. I don't really understand why, but that's pretty dope. Yeah. But they seem pretty cool. So anyway, so they wrote and directed this film, and outside of Kathryn Hahn, it also stars Jane Lynch, who plays a very Jane Lynch character in this movie. Maybe not as over the top as Jane Lynch, but
it's just the worst therapist of all time.
Yeah, pretty much. It also has Josh Radnor. For those of you who watched How I Met Your Mother, this is it's Ted Mosby. Keegan Michael Key.
Well, fun fact: Sawyer Ever, who plays the young boy Logan in this movie, actually also plays young Ted in How I Met Your Mother.
Huh. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. That's funny. Wait, when did How I Met Your Mother came out? Was this before or after? I feel like this was after.
2014 was How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, so this is before. Oh no, it ended in 2014. So this was at the end of. Yeah. Oh, I did not know that Josh Radnor was in Not Another Teen Movie. That's funny.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And then I'm trying
that movie's great.
That is such a fun. Chris Evans, he's so funny. And then Josh Stamberg is in this movie, and he's one of those that guy actors. But I think If I'm not mistaken, yeah. So Josh Stamberg, for those of you who do watch WandaVision, he is Director Hayward in
I knew I fucking
WandaVision.
recognized that guy.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's great.
Yeah, he that was exactly it is. I was like, I know this guy's face, like I've seen it before, but I can't like put two and two together of how I know this guy's face, and it's because I saw him in WandaVision with Kathryn Hahn. Very crazy. And then, of course, if we haven't mentioned, it's Juno Temple also is in this film. She's plays the actor McKenna, or plays the character McKenna.
Why am I having trouble finding? Anyway, go on.
You know what? I maybe this is what you were looking for, but like Juno Temple is one of those actresses, and I'm like, oh yeah, Juno Temple. But if you were like, hey, what has she been in? I'd be like, this movie. I
Dark Knight
cannot
Rises.
like, huh?
Dark Knight Rises. She was.
Who was she in Dark Knight Rises?
She was Selena Kyle's like young protege. I forget the character name, like Jenny or something like that. She was also in the second Sin City movie. No, the confusion that I had was looking for the guy who played director Sandberg or whatever the fuck his name is. I was trying to find him in the credits.
Oh, he's all the way down, Josh Stamberg.
That's because it's his real last name. Yeah, I could say I thought it was weird that he would be so like low build amongst a bunch of people who like I feel like don't necessarily stand out. Not that they were bad. That sounded shitty. Wow, Caleb, you're an asshole.
No, but I understand what you mean though, because like I mean, when you have somebody like Josh Radnor, who was at this point, like How I Met Your Mother was one of the most watched TV shows at this time. Like this is the height of How I Met Your Mother, and he's like 8th build. You have Jane Lynch, who's like 4th build. Like I get it, and like Link Ruiz, Cesar Garcia, like.
The two car wash attendants who I feel like we don't even actually see them.
Yeah.
Like I think they were cut from the movie and they're 2nd and 3rd builds.
Right. Yeah, it's very odd. Yeah, like the top like 4 people, like one of the top people doesn't even have a photo. The other one is just doorman. Doorman to what? the strip club, I assume. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, he was the one who checked the ID. Yeah,
the one scene. Yeah. Which is just quick sidebar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea what Josh Radnor is like as like a human? Like, do we have any inkling if he's like actually an okay person? I ask because I feel like he always plays the biggest fucking weenies.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't heard anything bad. Here, we'll Google search Josh Radnor controversy.
Oh no!
Why Hollywood won't cast Josh Radnor anymore?
Like, I don't want to have an unfair opinion of him as a human based on his characters, but like, I think that I might.
So. So this article is basically like people won't cast him because he's too much like Ted Mosby, and that he's just like a very soft-spoken, nice guy, apparently.
So yeah, he's apparently just an all right guy, but just gets cast in these roles that you're like, I fucking hate this person.
You're like, you're such a twerp. Like, he's just such a dweeb. Actually, it's like, it's funny. But yeah, I think that's funny. Like, that's a very funny story of like Josh Radnor. Like, oh man, is he like shitty? No, he's just kind of there. he's just a cool guy. But like,
all right, one more sidebar. And this, I promise, is relevant to the podcast. Cool. Michaela Watkins, who plays Jenny, is going to be in Josh Rubin's new movie, Werewolves Within. Josh Rubin, of course, listeners, if you remember, was the writer, director, and star of Scare Me, one of the best movies that I've ever seen, and certainly one of the best in the horror genre. He has a new movie coming up slated for sometime this year. Hopefully that actually happens. Called Werewolves Within, which my favorite part of this so far is that it was written by someone whose last name is Wolf.
That
Apparently
is
that was
just
total coincidence.
fucking brilliant. Oh man, I am so
And all I
excited
want to
for
know
that.
is, do the werewolves have guns and do they get revenge?
Do they get revenge? That's all we need to know. That's all we need to know. That's it. So wait, here's another sidebar. So I'm going to tell you a moment of absolute crazy coincidence. Okay.
Okay.
So Friday night, I watched the New Mutants, the movie.
Yeah,
So I watched it. I hadn't seen it yet. It was marred with controversy of reshoots and release date pushes, and ended up getting pushed like for like 3 years. And finally, I watched the movie, and I'm like, it's not bad. It wasn't bad, but it's not great. So Juniper today, my daughter today, I was driving her back to her mom's house, and she's like, yeah, like she's into drawing right now, so she's like learning how to draw, characters and stuff like that. And she was like, I've created these like characters, and like one of them, she can like teleport, and she can like create armor like on her body and has like this cool sword, and another one she can like turn into a wolf. And I'm like, this is literally the plot of New Mutants. And she was like, and they're all like in this school, but like they're trying to get out of the school. I was like, this is did you watch this movie? Like, were you paying attention? Like, I didn't even have her on Friday. I was like, how did you wait a minute? It was very, very coincidental. Yeah.
Has she seen it?
No, she never even heard of it. I was like, that's the movie New Mutants. She was like, I don't know what that is. And I was like, this. And I like showed her a trailer, and she was like, I've never seen this before. And I'm like, what? How did you just like guess the plot of this movie? Well, I mean, obviously that speaks volumes to the plot of that movie, but
oh, rude. You take it back. I was also known for trying to copy existing characters when creating my imaginary comic books as a kid, but I did it more knowingly, and I'm impressed that she was able to get so close to like the characters and the plot of that movie without having any knowledge of it. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
good for her.
Rather than dunking on the movie, let's just say that speaks volumes to her creativity, that she independently came up with a Hollywood movie.
So the other character that she described, which actually is very sounds really fucking cool, and I think you'll appreciate this one too, is a character that was cursed, and the way she is cursed is that behind one of her eyeballs are tentacles that can come out and grab things, but she's not in complete control of the tentacles. So like if she gets really angry, the tentacles will just come out and like fuck people up and then like go back into her eye. And I was like, that's actually really fucking cool. That's actually a really cool character. Yeah. I'm like, that's like, what a torture. That's like Spawn style, like just tortured.
Dude.
Like that's fucking cool.
Your daughter's gonna be into some weird fucking anime when she grows up.
Oh, it's gonna be awesome. I cannot wait. I have an entire list of just like shit that like once she's mature enough to be like, all right, here's these 5 anime you need to watch. They are fucked up.
Oh, so you like tentacles, do you?
Not that kind of tentacle anime. Listen. Different tentacle anime. That's my kid. Oh yeah. No, I got some really fucked up ones. Yeah. Oh shit. What's the one? So actually, one just came out on High Rise Invasion, I think it's called. Yeah. So one actually just came out on Netflix. It's an anime called High Rise Invasion. I just started watching it. This is the most like it is a crazy anime, but the plot of this is just fucking dope.
Oh god, this looks horrifying.
Yeah. So essentially what it is people are teleported to this other realm, but it looks just like a city, but you are on the tops of buildings. You're on high rises of buildings, and all the buildings are connected via rope bridges. Okay. Now, meanwhile, there are people with masks, like smiley face masks, coming around basically trying to intimidate you or scare you so badly that you kill yourself by jumping off the high rise, or whatever it is. But if they can't push you enough despair and insanity that you kill yourself, they will in fact kill you. And they have guns and swords and stuff like that, but they don't talk. And what we learn is that the people in the masks are also people that were sent here, but they're like brainwashed, and the mask is like sending them signals, telling them things to do. So if like they fuck up, the mask tells it to kill. It basically says like, kill yourself. You fucked up, kill yourself. And like, so like, it's just this crazy fucking story. I'm only like 3 or 4 episodes in, but damn, is it crazy. And it's very, very violent, and it's pretty fucked up, but it's actually pretty fucking cool. I'm really enjoying it. I'm gonna watch more tonight, but it is really fucking cool. I just like the concept of it, the fact that like you wake up on top of a roof and, you know, basically it's like either jump off or survive. Go. You have literally nothing. Go. Crazy. But anyway,
you need to go see Jane Lynch.
So she can tell me her relationship status.
Dr. Lenore.
So this film, you know, credit openings to movies often are like, they're just cool scenes, you know, like I often think back to like Napoleon Dynamite, the opening to that movie, you know, where they're like making the sandwich and like it's all the food things and the prep in the school binder, and it's like, well, it's cool, but all it really does is kind of set the tone for the film, but it doesn't add necessarily any plot or give you any sort of exposition. However, the opening credits to this one is Kathryn Hahn essentially sitting in her car, getting a car wash, you know, rifling through her recent call list. And we see that it's like the same 3 places over and over again. It's like her husband's work, you know, like a school and like a babysitter or something, but it's basically just like the same things over and over and over again. You know, she's sitting in the car wash, she hops over to the passenger seat, she hops in the back seat. It was just such an amazing way to say like, hey, this is, you know, very cliche thing, but this is a bored housewife. Like, this is someone who is just like, I'm in my routine, I'm in my rut here, I'm doing my thing, and this is it. I guess this is as good as it gets. Which I don't know. I thought it was a really cool way to introduce like the character right off the bat.
Yeah, and like it's boredom personified.
Yeah.
But also like I felt that because those car washes can be like kind of like entrancing almost, and just like just rolling through, and there's all the colors and the motion and whatnot. And I love how she's just climbing around to the different seats.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely
just seeing
it's yeah, it definitely sets up like her character as like kind of this ennui.
Nice. That was fancy. And so, our main character is Rachel, Kathryn Hahn, and she is married to Josh Radnor, and they have a son, Logan. And so we meet Rachel, and you know, right off the bat, we see her, you know, participating in PTA type activities. You know, she's with a group of women, and you know, they're like, you know, let me take photos. Okay, get everybody like this. I'm posting it now. And you can tell like it's one of those like PTA mom groups that you're just like, oh my God, shut the fuck up. You know, like it's just like, oof. You know, where like being a mom is like their entire personality. You know, which is fine, whatever. But you know what I mean? Like it's like so over the top that it becomes that like obnoxious, you know, like caricature of being an actual, you know, parent. And you can tell that she's just like she's doing the motions, but you can see right off the bat that she's like, fuck. Like just like metaphorically banging her head against the wall.
Well, and of course you instantly have this like very stereotypical group of movie moms where there's as Ellen put it, there's an alpha mom who's just kind of
Yep.
really shitty to everyone, and then there's like one who like everyone kind of like pokes fun at behind her back, and like there's like Rachel who's disaffected with it all.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like Rachel and Stephanie are probably the most normal. Rachel and like her I would say the closest friend of that group, Stephanie, are
Mm-hmm.
kind of the most normal of all. And I feel like Stephanie probably is the most normal of all because obviously, whereas everyone else is like that, oh, I'm super mom, Rachel is in that like, I'm in a deep, dark depression and I'm about to fuck shit up. And
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie's kind of just like, we're going to have another kid and we have a happy, healthy relationship.
Well,
With
she's
my
married to
husband.
She's married to Keegan Michael Key,
I would
who
also
I
be
think
happy.
is wildly underutilized in this movie.
Yeah, I will agree with that completely. I think he has maybe 3 lines, and they were likely ad libbed.
Yeah, like not enough screen time.
Yeah. So yeah, so Rachel's going about her business, and she's talking to Stephanie, or we see her talking to her therapist, Jane Lynch, and they're kind of going over the deal. It's like, oh, so how are you doing with this thing? One of the things was like, getting down on the floor and playing with her son, like, feeling okay enough to interact. Now, obviously, they don't necessarily say it in the film, but it's clear that Kathryn Hahn is definitely suffering from something to the effect of like a depression or something. She's
Mm-hmm.
she's in on herself. She's completely closed off and cut off from emotions. She mentions her and her husband haven't had sex in months. And like it's gotten to the point where they just don't even talk about it because she just doesn't even want to talk about it. Like she wants to, and she even says like I want to, but like every time like it gets to the point where we could, she's just kind of like because she's so in her head about it that she ends up just not wanting it, and make some sort of excuse. Same thing. She says, "Oh yeah, I play with my son," and then it cuts to a scene of him like on his iPad while she's like texting on her phone and stuff. So you can tell that
Yeah.
she's just closed off.
And she's giving these answers like, yes, everything's fine, we're great, we're happy, yeah, like I love playing with Logan, we make these connections, and yeah, things are great with my husband, and then of course we see the scenes where it's very obviously not, and Dr. Lenore, Jane Lynch, is like, so you don't have to tell me the truth, but it is your time. You did pay for it. And so, like, maybe let's actually talk about these things. And that's the one and only time that she's a good therapist.
Right. Because then she immediately follows it up at being like, let me tell you about me and my wife Portia. So,
Yeah.
and then she begins to tell a story about like how they, her and her girlfriend or wife, and how they met and stuff like that, which is insanely inappropriate. And then immediately, Stephanie, her Rachel's best friend, calls this out and was like, "You really need to fire your therapist. Like, this is insanely inappropriate. Like, she should not be talking about her personal relationships while trying to therapize you." And agreed, if your therapist does this, or if you are a therapist who does that, you cut that shit out.
Like, I can see having some degree of making it like a mutual connection to empathize, but like there's definitely like, no, that's a line.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, I've had an experience similar to that, like this is what I did, but it's another thing to be like, well, let me tell you about my good life. Like, let me tell you the
or,
intimate moments of my relationship by name. It's like, oh, what?
or my
No.
bad life.
Or my bad life. Yes, as it ends. Yeah. Um but yeah, so Rachel's really into it, but she's talking to Stephanie, and they're talking about sex and about how maybe they haven't really heard that her and her husband really haven't had sex, and Stephanie says, "Hey, you should give this a shot." So my husband and I, we go to strip clubs, and we go to strip clubs, we get all worked up, and then we go home and just go at it, and it's like a really good way to like kind of build up that sort of sexual tension, and then to go home and kind of have that release. It's a really nice intimate thing and sexual thing that we can share together. And Rachel's like, well, I've never been to a strip club, and she poses it to Jeff, who was just like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
They make me the opposite of horny.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever go to a strip club and there's a buffet, like that is the surefire way for me to be like, this is not having the effect you think it will.
All right, so real talk.
Okay.
I've actually considered going for the buffet in the past. There was one. I don't know if they still do, but there was one on the north side of Syracuse that was known for their lunch buffet, and far from it being like, let's go for the boobies. My old boss at the coffee shop and I used to joke about going for lunch. Just so they're like, what is the food like here?
So I did it once. So I worked with this guy way back when I was a producer at Fox. I worked with this guy, and on his last day, this was a thing. He had talked about it for years. I worked with him for 7 years, and basically on his last day, he moved to Chicago. Before he moved, everyone, it was like me, him, and there was two other female producers, and we were like, all right, man, like, what do you want to do for lunch? Like, it's your last day, we'll do anything. And he's like, I want to go to Paradise Found and do the lunch buffet. And so we fucking went to a strip club and did a lunch buffet. Here's the four of us, like, on our lunch break in like our work clothes. And like, we're all dressed very nicely at this lunch buffet at a strip club. And it was like, I mean, there was nobody there. It was the most awkward thing in the world. And the food was mashed. I mean, it was like Ponderosa food. It was okay. Yeah.
That's really like, you can go to a strip club anytime, and this is not judging people who do or people who don't. Like, I'm expressing no opinions here.
Go for it.
My curiosity lies entirely with, what is the food like?
It was just like old country buffet. It was like mashed potatoes and like, finger foods, pretty much. And there was like, some corn, mashed potatoes. There was like some like deli meat. I think there was like Salisbury steak or something. Like, it was just fucking weird. Right. Like, it was just the most like it was like every food you could possibly name that you would never want to eat while seeing someone naked, no matter how intimate. Like, even your own spouse eating, like, if you're sitting there eating mashed potatoes, like, the last thing you want to do is like see your spouse naked. And like, that was all those foods. It was all of that food, and we were just eating, and we're like, listen. I just eating corn and watching a woman's vagina is not on my top list of things to do.
We here at Never Heard of It are committed to not yucking other people's yum. So, like, there are people out there who may very much have a fetish for eating like heavy gut food from a buffet, and that may be very much a part of their sexual experience. And you know what? Good for them.
Yeah. I mean, no, it was not appealing to me. By all means, if that is your lunch opinion, right? It was just and like the thing about Paradise Found. Do you remember, like, Paradise Found had like this tropical feel to it? So like,
you know what it was, right?
It was Kahunaville.
It was Kahunaville.
Kahunaville was like this. It was like Margaritaville with like the tiki statues, and they talked and stuff like that. And this strip club called Paradise Found, it used to just look like a normal strip club, with like the lights and the glowy balls and stuff like that. But this restaurant, Kahunaville, which was all tikied out, went out of business, and Paradise Found went and bought their entire stock of decoration and then completely decorated the strip club to look like a fucking tiki bar with the talking statues on the side of the stage. And it was the weirdest fucking thing, but it kind of worked.
They didn't make them talk though, because that would have been so weird. So, like, I went in there after the transition to the Paradise Found with all the Kahunaville stuff, and it was the most bizarre experience because, like, Kahunaville was a big deal when I was younger. Like, we didn't go to that mall very often, and I didn't get to go. Like, I don't think I ate there until like right before it closed.
Yeah.
So like into my like early adulthood. But they also had this massive arcade and the talking statues, and you like a lot of it, like with the decor and stuff like that was even still there long after I started working at that mall. So like it was a part of my formative years experience with that mall. And then to see it all transplanted here into a place where people exchanged currency for the pleasure of seeing other people naked, it was a strange experience. It really was.
Yeah, and the fact that Paradise Found was at the time a completely nude club. It wasn't just a topless
Oh,
club,
that's
so it
right.
was
Yeah.
like even more so like pretty good. It would be kind of funny though if the statues. So for any of you guys who used to watch Legends of the Hidden Temple as a kid and you remember Olmec, it's the same statue. It literally is like the same idea, except it looks more like a tiki thing with the same sort of voices. So it'd be like. Up
They would
next
crack
is
jokes at
Candy
each
to
other.
the stage. She rocks. It'd be like that.
When they were in the mall, they would like had them like on a timer rotation, and they would like crack like dad jokes to each other all day.
Oh,
it was great. It was great.
You know what? I really miss Kahunaville. It was like, because it was like in a really cool part of our mall too. So it was like down in like the basement underneath like the front entrance. So it seemed like you were entering in this cool little tiki jungle with all this stuff. And then there was like waterfalls and like blue light. It was really fucking cool. I cannot for the life of me remember what the food was like. We did eat there a few times, but I just remember the atmosphere.
The only thing I remember was a pretty banging coconut shrimp.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Like I said, I think I only ate there once, and it was like after, after I went there, like as a like probably late teens, early 20s, like right before they closed, whenever that was.
Yeah.
And was going with my own money because my parents weren't paying for food.
Do you have?
It was somewhat
money,
overpriced,
Taylor?
and it was definitely a pay for the novelty sort of place.
Yeah,
it's like we're gonna get Wendy's, and you're gonna like it. Well, I mean, yes, I am gonna like it, but damn it,
but fine. Yeah.
Can I at least get a Frosty? No. Okay.
Yeah. Fine. Yeah, Kahunaville was wild. But yeah, so Rachel, Jeff, Stephanie, and Bo end up going to Bo is Keegan, Mike, and Key. Keegan, Michael, Key. They end up going to this strip club. So before we continue on with the movie, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break, but we're going to do it a little differently than we normally do. Instead of cutting away and having some other person talk about a show, we're just going to talk about the shows that you should watch instead as our commercial break. We're doing a little different. You seem surprised.
This was happening?
However, this was, in fact, in our last meeting. Oh, shit. Maybe you weren't in that meeting. Maybe that was a marketing meeting with Andrea.
Yeah, I was definitely not in that.
So,
I mean, it's fine.
Yeah,
I have no problem with it.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the show Latchkey Kids. Latchkey Kids is a show hosted by Sarah Sweeney, and basically every week she grabs one of her internet friends and chats with them about what they're doing, how they're handling quarantine, or how they handle the quarantine now that it's kind of starting to ease up slightly, and just what they do. One of my standout interviews that she did, the last two actually, was Greg Baldwin, who was the voice of Uncle Iroh on Avatar. She did a 2-part interview with him, and that was just fantastic. It was just a really cool interview to hear about him, like voice acting, getting into it, and like how everything changed over the past year and a half. And then most recently she did an interview with Tim Long, who is a writer for The Simpsons, and that was pretty awesome. And then of course at the end, because she has all of her guests do a dramatic reading of a TV show theme song, which is just after like the really good interviews, it's just like the icing on the cake of this show. And I think it's really awesome. You should definitely check it out. You can go to latchkeykidspodcast.com or of course nightshiftradio.com to find out more.
Hooray.
Hooray! But that's our commercial break. That's what we do. But I do want to mention that, of course, if you have not subscribed yet to this podcast, I highly recommend it. One
Yeah.
thing we've talked about over the past couple episodes, but we've learned is that most podcast players will not show you bonus episodes or trailer episodes if you are not subscribed. So if you happen to just kind of be getting suggested to watch our show because you're listening to our show because you did before, but haven't actually hit that subscribe button, you're actually missing a whole bunch of content that we
So
put
much
out. We
content.
put out a trailer every week, and we've been known to do bonus episodes. In fact, we will be doing another one this weekish in the next week or so. So you'll definitely want to make sure you subscribe. And of course, the really, really big one, and I cannot stress this enough, if you can do anything, leaving a rating and review is insanely helpful for the show. It helps rank us higher so more people discover the show, so more people can suggest crazy movies for us to watch, and we can have way more content. So definitely do that if you have the opportunity, by rating and reviewing either here or on Podchaser if that's a thing you're on. And if you're not, don't bother looking it up. It's fine. But yeah. I mean, it's a cool site, but if it's not a thing you already know about, it's not gonna be anything to you.
If podcasts are like really your thing, then look into it.
But then look into it. Yeah, totally. But if you're like, I listen to like 4 podcasts, don't worry about it. Just keep listening to us and you'll be fine. Go to nightshiftradio.com. You'll be fine.
Oh yeah, nightshiftradio.com. Which of course you can go to find out about all of the great shows we have on the Night Shift Media Group network, including some brand new stuff that we have either recently announced or are about to announce. So stay tuned for some really great. I mean, we are about to hit our first anniversary. You don't really say 1 year anniversary because it's only happened once. Our first anniversary as a network, which coincides coincidentally with the 3rd anniversary of Never Heard of It. So lots of great stuff happening. It's been a wild ride, and we can't wait to keep building on it. And of course, if you don't know already, you can always check out what we here at Never Heard of It have going on by visiting thenahoit.com, where we have a link to upcoming episodes with trailers and links to where you can find the movie streaming if available. And of course, the contact form, where, as we mentioned earlier, people sometimes suggest movies for us to watch and talk about. And you can do that right through our website. Of course, Michael, I think people sometimes do that through social media, yeah?
Yeah, actually, very frequently we've gotten tweets where people have been like, yo, you should check out this trailer and watch this movie. So you can do that at the Nahoit Podcast. That's the NHOIT podcast on both Twitter and Instagram. We've had on multiple occasions people tweet movies to us, being like, hey, this is crazy. You guys should totally watch this. Actually, we just got one today.
Yeah.
Someone recommending the Cube movies, which we've talked about before. We haven't reviewed them, but we have mentioned them. Caleb, you mentioned them a few episodes ago. But yeah,
it's actually a person named Kevin, who's another St. Louis local, who's very passionate about the city and all things going on around here that I follow specifically for those reasons. But Kevin suggested the Cube movies, and specifically Cube 2, which, if you'll recall, is Cube 2 Hypercube, which, as I explained to Kevin, I have in fact seen all of the Cube movies. I watched the first one when it came out. I watched it on DVD, I think, with my family, which was a very awkward experience because it's a brutally violent movie, kind of a precursor to the Saw type movies, the torture porn sort of stuff. And then I actually watched Cube 2 Hypercube on a date night once, which was slightly less weird, just given the person that it was with, but still a very weird experience. Kevin, I really appreciate the suggestion, and we have in the past committed to always following through on suggestions. I'm not sure I can do that to myself again, but you know what? If my fortitude returns, we'll give that a go. Maybe we'll do a month where we just do the Cube movie straight through.
Oh boy. Yes. So those are all the ways on all the things. So now that's all done. We can get back to Afternoon Delight. So Rachel and Jeff and crew roll up into the strip club, and they're having a good time. They're hanging out, they're drinking, and people are dancing. And surprisingly little nudity in the strip club. It was a very small amount. But anyways, so Jeff pays for a lap dance for Rachel with this girl, McKenna, who is Juno Temple. And so, Juno Temple takes her into the back room. She does her whole lap dance thing. It's very like, you can tell that, it's kind of like somewhat awakening things, not necessarily in a sexuality way, but just sort of awakening kind of that like her personal sexuality of like how she feels and stuff like that. And she's starting to like feel, and she's like, oh wow, like blah. And so she, after the lap dance, she's off on one side of the club, and she sees McKenna, who kind of like gives her a little nod and a wink, and she was like, oh, okay. And so they go home, and Jeff and Rachel, they're like, hey, like let's do this, like we're gonna do it, right now, like I'm gonna, and they're being really awkward about it. And then she proceeds to vomit, and so ends their intimate night. And she's like, I'm sorry. He's like, it's fine.
That I love awkward movies. That's kind of one of my like genres that I really gravitate to. This one was incredibly awkward, even by my standards.
Yeah. It was pretty wild. So right off the bat after this, we see it's been about a week, and we see that Rachel is she's just thinking about that experience. So she actually ends up going back out to this club and finding McKenna, and like finding a way to bump into her just outside, at like this coffee place. And, she ends up talking, and she ends up meeting up with her a couple of times, and they just kind of like start to become friends. And, at one point it basically leads up to McKenna's car ends up getting towed, and like all her stuff is there. Her boyfriend kicks her out, and she was like, well, what am I going to do? And Rachel is there, and she's like, why don't you stay with me? And thus begins the absolute fucking hellstorm of this movie.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? This stranger that I literally don't know, who clearly has fucked up situations happening.
So first of all, it's important to state, and for any long-term listeners of the show, that we fully support sex workers and feel that sex work is real work. And so, when we talk about the events of this movie, we are in no way passing judgment on the character of McKenna for her chosen profession. But the rest of the characters are really shitty to her about it. So it may at some point, as we discuss it, come across as though we agree, and we do not. So that said, don't fucking feel like you have to save someone from being in sex work.
Right.
If that's their choice. I mean, if that is not their choice, if they are genuinely in danger and like in duress, then yes, do what you can to help them. But don't feel like you're their savior by like you're gonna get them out of that life. You're gonna show them what real work is.
I'm gonna change it. You're like, no, that's not shit. Listen, we literally record podcasts. Like, we're like lower, like in most people's judging world, like we're lower than most sex workers, like in terms of job respect. But so the thing
we don't even make money doing what we do.
Right. So the thing about this is that Rachel starts this off as like well, she tries to justify it by being like, oh, well, she didn't have anywhere to go. And, she clearly looks like, she's young. Cause like when she gets the lap dance from her, she asks her how old she is. And McKenna says she's 19. And she's like, oh, she's just this kid. Like she just needs help. Like she has nowhere to go. She's stripping for money, and that sort of thing. So like in her head, she tries to justify it as like, no, I'm going to save this child by like propping her up and help her do this thing. And it starts off altruistic, but really her ulterior motives are she's trying to like fix the thing inside of herself.
Yeah, well, and they make a point early in the movie of showing the moms group making sandwiches for the unhoused, but doing it for the Instagram likes. So very much not doing it like out of the goodness of their hearts, but doing it for show. And then when Rachel takes McKenna in and she's trying to like explain and, let's be honest, justify this decision to Jeff, she says, I do all this work for the homeless, but like here's someone who's actually homeless right in front of me, and how could I turn her away? And like, okay, that makes sense. Like that feels like someone who's trying to do actual good. But then, like, the more that she actually learns about McKenna and how McKenna doesn't just dance, she also meets with clients and performs sexual acts for money. And she refers to herself as a sex worker. And both Rachel and Stephanie are like, "What's a sex worker?" Nah,
Yeah.
like, oh, come on, you know. But yeah, the more that she learns about McKenna, the more she feels like she has to step in as this like mother figure, as this savior.
Yeah, it builds up onto that, like I said, like the first part of it, when she talks about, hey, I have nowhere to go, hey, I'm 6 months sober, like, yes, those are great things to step in and help someone with, but the other part is not the part that she actually needs help with at all.
Yeah.
In fact, like, she's very established with that, and she's like, no, I'm fine with that. She's like, if I make $6,000 in one night, she's like, and I'm perfectly okay. But then we see that she is perfectly okay with it too. One of the instances in the film is, after a severe breaking point, Rachel decides to go with McKenna to one of her appointments to be like the side girl, because this client likes it when he's with McKenna and another girl watches. And so she's like, okay, yeah, I will do that. I will go with you and do this. And she kind of has that moment of like, fine, I'm going to do it, but then just, completely freaks out. Now, mind you, she should freak out. She's married and didn't tell her husband. She ends up like being involved. I mean, not like sexually involved, like directly, but it's enough where it's like, anyone would consider this cheating. So we should probably you should probably take this down a notch a little bit, and but she has that moment of like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want her to be a part of that. Cause she's been lying to her other friends. Stephanie knows, but she's been lying to her other friends saying that she's a nanny for Logan. And then she was like, no, I don't want her to be a part of anything, and she freaks out, and we have our moments. Now, trivia fact, this movie came out in 2013, and during this year, Quentin Tarantino listed this film as one of his favorite films that came out this year. And in watching this movie, I was like, of all movies, why would Tarantino like this movie? Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm watching the movie as it goes, and I'm like, why would Tarantino? I mean, it's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but I was like, why is it? And then it gets to the moment where there's a very intimate and close-up foot massage that McKenna gives to the, and I was like, that's what it is. There it is.
Yes.
That's the only reason. And he never watched the rest of the movie.
Foot massage feels real good, and I got man, like she's using this menthol, like basically like a Vicks vapor rub without saying the brand name. Like that's gotta feel real good. Just like the heat and the cool. Oh God.
Well, she does the thing, and then she immediately puts the sock on it, and she's like, "You got to keep it warm." Like that's like the OG, and it probably was pretty fantastic. But nonetheless,
that's good medicine.
Yeah, the only reason why. But so that moment, so now mind you, Stephanie has been living there, and there really hasn't been any sort of sexual tension per se. Like, she's not really flirty with Jeff. Jeff, in fact, just like actively avoids her at all costs, and he's not creepy at all. I have to give it to the writer, Joey. They did a very good job, because this is like typically the perfect way to be like, bring this woman in. Husband sleeps with woman. Wife says, what the fuck? Why'd you sleep with this woman? And he's like, why did you bring this woman into my house? Like, yeah, I fucked up, but like, this is fucked up. Like, you actively brought a sandwich in and then said, don't eat it, and then let it like push against my lips. That's a 50-50. I don't know. I've got a weird analogy thing going, but you know what I mean? Like, this is that typical Hollywood thing where they throw that situation in, and you're like, the husband's gonna fuck her, but he doesn't, and it's great. I'm very, very pleased by it. I'm actually very happy, because he even admits to, there was a lot to this movie that I'm like, you broke so many great cliches, minus the whole like everybody kind of dumps on the sex worker, but then never like there's no resolution to being like, oh hey, we were fucked up, sorry McKenna, sorry we were fucked up, and like, you know, we're shitty to you. Like there's never any of that in the movie. Everyone just be like, man, we were really fucked up, and then we just sort of kicked that girl out, and then we never heard from her again. She was almost like a manic pixie dream girl to Rachel.
Yeah. Yeah,
Actually, that's
an
actually
interesting
kind of funny.
comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like if anything, the writer used this as a way to like further reinforce how like aloof and disconnected and kind of like out of touch Jeff was with Rachel and with, you know, his child and with their home, and how like he had just put everything into work, and like that was all he cared about, which in itself was a bit of a trope, but like it played really well to the point where like bringing this young woman, this young sex worker into their home at no point was like a temptation for him, because he wasn't present.
Yeah. He even says that too. He's like, I realize like I've been asleep too. Like I have not noticed, you know, I haven't noticed you, you know, being in this state, like being, you know, sort of depressed and having those feelings. I didn't, you know. Then actually there is a moment when Jeff sort of like has that moment. So later in the film, you know, this is after the point where she's gone off, where Rachel has gone off with McKenna on a job, you know, and she comes back and she's like freaking out. Oh my God, I don't want this woman in my house. I don't want her near the kids. Like, Jeff, tell her she's got to go away or something. You know, so Jeff says, hey, oh, she's supposed to like babysit a bunch of the PTA moms girls. And then she was like, no, we don't want that. Like, tell her no. And so Jeff was like, hey, you can't babysit the girls. And he's like, okay, well, truth be told, you know, they found out, you know, the details about what you do, and now they're not comfortable with you being around their kids. You know, they're like preschoolers, because like preschoolers totally know about sex work or the implication of the morality of that in any way whatsoever. Totally. Right, absolutely, as do all 3-year-olds. And so, you know, at this point, McKenna is like, okay, you know, so like she's like, you know, fuck you, get off your high horses. She ends up breaking her sobriety. You know, Jeff has a bunch of the guys over, and she's supposed to have left because he's having his friends over. And she ends up staying. She ends up, you know, getting trashed. She tries to actually come on to Jeff. Like she starts like kind of dancing around, like doing lap dance type things, and she gets on Jeff and gets really close, and he like pushes her away, and he's like, what the fuck is going on? And she ends up sleeping with Josh Stamberg, who is the husband of Jenny, the like alpha female of the PTA group. And it's just all fucking hell breaks loose, and like Rachel and Jeff like fight, and Josh and Jenny, you know, get divorced, and you know, they kick McKenna out, and it's just a fucking mess.
It's a mess. All of this, like the poker night shenanigans, are happening at the same time as the women are having a women and wine night.
Yes.
And you see throughout it that Rachel is getting progressively more and more drunk, and like in her head, and starts bringing up really awkward subjects. She starts talking about like, does anyone ever wonder what their abortions would have ended up like? Like digs into that, and then she's like, have you ever had an open eye orgasm? And like, it's like a really weird, fucked up version of that what Jonathan Frakes show.
Oh,
you ever have an open eye orgasm? Just you can picture him saying it.
Right. Rides up on his bicycle.
False. Never happened.
Well, yeah. It's not true.
And then like, you know, they like at one point she gets so trashed that she like slips up and calls what's the one, Amanda, I think, is her name? The one that they all dunk on. Yeah.
Amanda.
You know, behind her back, they call her Kosher Amanda, and they make fun of her like resting facial expression and all this stuff. And she slips up and calls Amanda that, and then like, instead of like immediately apologizing, just like really goes all in on like you do like you're so uppity and follow all the rules about, like, really just lays into her, like really shitty to her,
Yeah.
and like women are having a bad time. Like this is, let's be
Yeah.
real, everyone's having a bad time, except Josh. Or
Right.
sorry, Matt. Josh Stanberg. Matt's having a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that whole scene was awkward. I mean, because, Rachel obviously is like, this is the epitome of her breaking point. And she's just
Mhm.
going all out and like talking about crazy things. And, some of the things that, the women get on. I have to say that scene I think what makes that scene feel more awkward is that it felt real. Like I felt like I
Mm.
was actually watching that take place. They actually seemed drunk to me. They actually seemed like they were having this conversation from experience. Like it felt very real to me.
Mhm.
And I would not be surprised if this was one of those films where they send the actors like a 10-page script and like, hey, these are the things you have to hit, but like feel free to fill like that whole scene. Like she was like, hey, this is what the feeling needs to be. The writer, Joey was like, hey, you have to talk about being having an abortion, talk about, being promiscuous in your 20s and poor, talk about awkward sexual experiences and like masturbation, like bring up these points and try to make them as awkward as possible. Also, you're trashed, go. And
Yeah.
like, and then they just
But
went and just did it. And it felt like that.
Stephanie drops the news that she's pregnant with another kid, and
Mm-hmm.
that brings out of Rachel this whole thing where like you get a sense that she wanted to have more kids, and like she didn't want to stop at Logan, but also like feels like she's trapped in this like wife mother suburban housewife life, and like she doesn't like necessarily know if one direction it was right or wrong for her, and like did she make any right decisions in her life, and like she like it's all coming out of her like at once, and she just feels like a total train wreck. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right that it feels very genuinely delivered by all of the women in this scene.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments throughout the movie that have those sort of feelings where you feel like she's stuck in this moment, like she's trapped in this moment of time, and she's only now realizing it. And one of the moments is they're swimming in a pool, and this is McKenna has just kind of shown up, and they're swimming in a pool, and
Hmm.
finally, everyone was like, fine, we're instead of just dipping our legs in and drinking, like we're actually going to get in and swim, like for real. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to do that too. And she takes her shirt off and she has a nursing bra on. And her friend Stephanie was like, are you wearing a nursing bra? She was like, yeah. She's like, Logan's 5 years old. Throw the fucking bra away. Just like, that's just such a great moment. And it was hilarious. But at the same point, like, it just shows that, like, she lived up her life. She talks to McKenna earlier and she's like, oh yeah, I wanted to be a like a wartime journalist. I wanted to be a journalist and report on that, but I ended up working for a PR firm, and then I had a kid and I just sort of stopped. Like her
Hmm.
life just paused, and then like Jeff's took off. Like he had been struggling as an app developer, and then one of his apps just exploded and he ended up selling his company for a shit ton of money. And now he just kind of like does things as rich people do. But she was like, but I just didn't do anything. Like I just, it one year led into another, and I was just exactly where I was when Logan was born. Like, so she's just like has that slice of her life that's just frozen in time. And that's what
Hmm.
leads up to, the big break and everything that we've seen. And the movie concludes with all of the explosion of everybody around her. A marriage explodes, like theirs almost explodes, which I thought it was great that they did end up kind of reconciling. But then again, McKenna just kind of fucks off, and there's no resolution to her, and that's the end of the movie, which is my only criticism of this movie.
Yeah, that's the thing that I kind of mused out loud, because I watched this movie separately, and Ellen actually started it after because she likes Kathryn Hahn and it sounded like an interesting movie. Um, and so like I was musing out loud. It feels like yes, it was a quote unquote happy ending, but like every character still has a lot of shit to work through.
Yeah.
And like to that extent, it kind of feels like somewhat more realistic that like nobody's lives like wrapped up in a neat little bow, but also it almost feels like a little bit too much of a like they tried to wrap one story up neatly, and the rest like it's like the times that I like if you've never seen me wrap a present, but if you ever see me wrap a present, I'll get like one fold perfect, and the rest looks like a fucking 3-year-old put it together, because I never learned to fold paper neatly and like tape and stuff like that. It's like that, but as a movie.
But as a movie, yeah. And I will say that that Jeff and Rachel, at the end of the movie, they're not like, look, our marriage is saved. They are very much like, okay, this is a thing we need to work on. This is a thing we need to work on. This is a thing you need to work on individually. This is a thing I need to work on individually, like mature adults do. They realize that there's the things they need to work on together, and then the things that they need to work on separately in order to make those middle things work out better. And like they leave it at the fact that they understand the next steps, but it's not just like you're right, I should listen more, da 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 da, the end. It is very much like this is just the beginning.
One thing I will give the filmmakers credit for, when I say that it feels like it had a little bit of a happy ending, I mean they literally end on Rachel orgasming.
Yes, this is true, and laughing. Yeah, out of joy,
out of sheer joy.
Happy ending. Did he? That's good. That was
you
good.
get it.
So Afternoon Delight streaming on Tubi TV as well as some other services. Should you watch this movie? Yes, absolutely. Kathryn Hahn is amazing in it. I think it's a cool story, minus the fact that we kind of uncovered that it is somewhat of a manic pixie girl, but in a different way for a woman instead of a man this time. But nonetheless, but I still think it's a great movie. And if you were fans of Kathryn Hahn from either Mrs. Fletcher, which was also fantastic, basically Afternoon Delight is the movie version of Mrs. Fletcher. So if you watch Mrs. Fletcher, watch that. But other than that, another thing that I think is very interesting, and this is out of pure coincidence, Kathryn Hahn was in Anchorman, which sang the song Afternoon Delight, and then she was in the movie Afternoon Delight. Yeah, which is a pure coincidence. But yes, I think you should watch this movie.
She was the voice of Doc Ock in Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, the female Doc Ock.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Anyway, yes, I agree. I mean, again, this is an incredibly awkward movie. It is a very uncomfortable movie. But if like me, you enjoy that in your films, then by all means do watch it. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what that's like.
I mean, you've gone this far, you might as well watch it. But thanks a lot for joining us, everyone, for this episode. We're going to be back again next week, and next week we're going to be doing the Sebastian Stan film, We Have Always Lived in the Castle, which is available on Netflix. But again, don't forget to subscribe. You'll be able to find out on the trailer.
Yeah, also a Shirley Jackson novel that it's based on. The writer of The Haunting of Hill House. So
it's going to be pretty exciting.
Very interesting, and can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah. All right, guys. We will see you next time.
Bye.